Hello and welcome to Opportunity Home San Antonio's special board meeting. Please note this meeting will be recorded in its entirety. We will now conduct Commissioner roll call. Chair, Gabriel Lopez.
Here.
Vice Chair, Gilbert Casillas.
Here.
Barbara Uncama Burford. Dalia Contreras.
Here.
Estrellita Garcia Diaz.
Here.
Janet Garcia. Leila Powell.
Here.
Doug Ponick, Board of Commissioners Attorney.
I'm here.
Acting President and CEO, Michael Reyes.
Here.
Additionally, we have an interpreter at the back of the room should you need their support. The time is 1:06 p.m. You may call the meeting to order.
Thank you. The Board of Commissioners or its committee may hold a closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071-076 for consultation concerning attorney-client matters, real estate, litigation, personnel, and security matters. The board or committee reserves the right to enter into closed meeting at any time during the course of the meeting. Do we have any citizens to be heard?
We have one citizen signed up to speak, Benito Frausto Aguirre.
My name is Benito Fraustro Aguirre. I live in the apartments of Cristo Rey.
Vivo en los apartamentos de Cristo Rey
I live in the apartments Cristo Rey.
y pues estoy muy a gusto.
I'm very comfortable.
No puedo decir más porque
Say more.
no tengo palabras para decir cómo me
I
tratan
have
ahí.
no words to
muy bien.
describe how I've been treated.
Que llegué ahí, estoy feliz ahí.
Since I arrived, I've been
Porque
very
los
happy.
trabajadores que llegan ahí
Because the workers who arrive there,
son buenas personas.
they're very good people.
Todos los que a veces los cambian o no sé por qué, pero
Everyone
los
who's there,
cambian.
even though they
Pero
change,
no los cambian por malos, los cambian por
They don't
buenos.
change
¿Entiende?
them because they're bad
Entonces,
people. It's
¿qué
because
más
they're
puedo
good people.
decirles que
What else can I
estoy
say?
feliz ahí?
I'm very happy living
Me
there.
gusta mucho el lugar ahí.
I really like this
Y
place.
pues en estas alturas, ¿qué
And
puedo
at this point
pedir?
in my life,
No puedo pedir más.
I can't ask for
Nomás que les
anything else.
agradezco y les doy muchas
I thank
todos,
you and thank
a usted.
everyone
muchas gracias porque pues porque estoy ahí.
because I'm there.
Sí. Y más no puedo decirles qué más.
Can't
No
say
tengo
anything else.
palabras. Es que todos son buenas personas
Everyone,
que van ahí a trabajar.
everyone's good
Todos
people.
los trabajadores.
Everyone who works there.
Y pues no tengo, es todo lo que les puedo decir.
That's all I can say.
Y que tengan un buen día y que
And
Dios los
hope you have a
bendiga a
good day.
todos.
And may God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias, señor.
That concludes our citizens signed up to speak.
Thank you. In accordance with our public hearing needs regarding Resolution 6726, authorizing the proposed 2025 to 2026 Moving to Work Agency Plan, including the revisions to the MTW Plan, the Public Housing Admissions and Continued Occupancy Policy, Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan, Capital Fund Program Plan, 5-Year Capital Improvement and Development Plan, and the Family Self-Sufficiency Program Action Plan. Ayana Longoria, Chief Strategy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is actually, I'd like to open the public meeting or the public hearing for the MTW plan. So at this point, what we're allowing is anyone who signed up or wants to share any feedback on our MTW plan, this would be the time to do it. All right, thank you. Then I will go into the presentation of the item.
Please.
All right, let me get started. So first and foremost, I
I want to take 1 second. Let's note Commissioner Garcia is now present.
Oh, I have the clicker. Oh, hello. Hi. I didn't realize I had this. So I'd like to start by explaining our Moving to Work designation. So this is something, we're one of the original 39 organizations that were granted this designation by HUD. And what it does is allows us an opportunity to improve the quality of our lives, of our residents' lives, by giving us some flexibilities that otherwise we would not have. And so what the MTW Toolbox provides us with is the opportunity for regulatory waivers, which would apply to our public housing or Section 8 program, or funding flexibility, which means we can use our funding in other ways. And so I'll go into what the funding fungibility is. So typically, when a housing authority, any housing authority, receives their funding from HUD, they're given their monies in specific allocations. So if they're given money for public housing, it can only be used for public housing. So we receive the same amount of funding as any other housing authority, but what happens is when we go through our budgeting process, we're able then to designate different uses for these funds. And so what that means is that we are able to use it for public housing or Section 8 operating expenses. We can use it to enhance our capital improvements, or other uses, which could be we develop and create activities that don't have funds available to them but support one of 3 objectives, which I'm going to talk about next. So there are 3 statutory objectives that each activity that we are asking to provide has to fit. It either fits 1 or all 3, the more the better, but it either has to be cost effective, and that would mean it reduces the cost to achieve greater cost efficiency in anything that we do. It provides housing choice for our families, and again, housing choice is very critical to a lot of the work that we do, and so again, ensuring that we're increasing housing choice and how we use our dollars. And the last one is self-sufficiency. And again, it would be giving incentives to families with children where the head of household is working, seeking work, preparing for work, anything that will help them enhance their stability and then move out of our assisted housing because they become economically self-sufficient. So a little bit about our timeline. So we actually start our planning cycle in the fall for this. We generally start in October. And what we do is we'll solicit resident feedback throughout using our strategic plan surveys. We align our MTW plan around the priorities of the strategic plan because they do often support each other. And we coordinate with our internal departments to figure out what program policy updates they need, what capital plans are happening, or if there's housing expansion plans that are going to be happening. We have also in this year revived something called the MTW Excellence Committee, which is internal staff, again, across the organization to help us brainstorm and think about from where they sit, what initiatives or activities we could provide using our flexibility. So this process goes on until January, and then after that point, we do submit the draft plan, and it has to be posted for 30 days for the public comment period, which is where we're at today. And on March 18th, that's again today is the public hearing for this. In April, once this is approved, should it be approved in April, then we will send it to HUD, and HUD may come back to us with questions. And if they don't, and everything's great, which again we'll hope it is, July 1 we would implement the plan. So again, a little bit about the public comment period and why it's important. It does have to run a full 30 days. We started it February 27th, and everyone is welcome to email comments to mtw@homesa.org, mail comments in by mail, or submit comments online. Our website has been designed to have an area where you can click and just add comments, and it'll come straight to us through this public notice. Our plan was very important and critical to ensuring the success of our outreach. And what we did were 4 consultations, one at HB Gonzalez, which is an elderly community, one at Mirasol, here, a family community. We had one at Villa Trencasey, which was for our resident councils, and that was our way of teaching our resident leadership. And then we had one at central office, which was also hybrid. So if we had members of the community that wanted to listen in and ask questions, they could participate virtually. At all of these outreaches that we have had interpretation services, again, because we want to make sure that everyone who's attending is able to fully understand what we're proposing and what the plan is about. We did have one staff consultation, which came as a way of a Thursday talk. Again, to make sure our own staff is informed about the MTW plan. It's just as important that our staff know what's going on. And then we did have this presentation recorded, and it was placed online, and it was made available to our landlords via the Landlord Corner. Again, as much outreach as we can possibly do, we're absolutely striving for that. We've done marketing for our staff weekly through the resident newsletters and of course through our social media. So let me get into the activities that were being proposed. So we are only proposing one activity this year. We're pretty much keeping the plan exactly the same, again, just due to the timing of getting into the position and getting the MTW Excellence Committee going. We focused on the early engagement. And so this was an activity that had initially, if it sounds familiar, it's because it was an activity that was prior part of the MTW plan in 2013 to 2014, and it continued on up until we had to end it due to COVID. So what this is, it requires that applicants complete a defined set of courses upon their admission to either public housing or Section 8. So before they're able to move into public housing or receive their housing choice voucher, they have to attend this seminar that we put together. And what happens at this half day is they'll go through courses on tenants, housekeeping, safety and security, financial literacy, and then we also have a resource fair with a lot of the partners that we work with, and they're throughout the community. So what we're doing in this activity, by doing this, we are bringing in, and it's only applicable to the head of household or other adult member. It doesn't apply to incoming elderly or disabled. They're welcome to participate, but it's not a requirement. Again, this is hosted by CDE. The purpose of our Community Development Initiatives Department hosting this and bringing residents into it is it actually links our residents to case management from the moment they start with us. So they have somebody that they know they can go to should they need resources. Again, that's the benefit of this, and where we're tying this back to our MTW work is through our self-sufficiency initiative. We have two activities that we're closing out, and so one is the elderly admissions preference at select public housing sites, and the other is limiting increases in rents. And I'll talk about the limiting increases in rents because it's closing it out, but what we're really doing is moving that under a different activity. So our organization is no longer implementing a rent cap. This waiver allows us to limit rent increases to 1 per year, and that's actually captured under our fiscal year 2019-2 alternative recertification. So that's to streamline reporting and activity management. So again, blending it under an already existing activity where it's being captured just prevents the redundancy of having to report out on the same initiative. So this activity will be closing out as part of our next year's plan. The elderly admissions and at select public housing sites. So this is something that we had called the 80-20. And what this activity was originally implemented to do, the goal was addressing the continuing concerns of our elderly residents at specific communities regarding lifestyle conflicts that have arisen between elderly and non-elderly disabled residents. So again, this was a pilot that we had tried for several number of years, and what we have determined this year upon, again, examination of the activity is that we have not been able to successfully hit that 80-20 ratio that we have been looking for. And instead what has happened is we have vacant units at these properties that we can't fill because we don't have enough elderly on our waiting list. So again, in order to prevent vacancies, get our units occupied, call people off the list, we're going to be removing this activity. Moving on to our development plans. So new construction, so we have more than 1,200 units that are going to be in the expansion pipeline, and you can see the breakdown of those units as they're being developed. Some are already in construction, some are coming down the road. And these are all, again, something that we'll be planning to do within the next year. So Josephine, Snowden Road, Palo Alto, Petrenko, Vista at Silver Oaks, Vista at Reed, and the Westside Reinvestment Initiative, WRI, which are single-family homes. Talking to the asset management plan, we're looking at expansion. So there are 4 tax credit acquisition properties that are to be brought into the portfolio, and this would account for an additional 977 units. So currently we have planned the Artisan at Mission Creek, Elon Gardens, Hemisphere, and Artisan at Creekside. And looking towards preservation, again, very important, over the next 5 years, we plan to invest $62 million in capital repairs to extend the useful life at 23 properties, and this would impact approximately 2,486 units. mentioning the FSS Action Plan, that's our Family Self-Sufficiency Program under CDI. They do have their own action plan, and they are not proposing any changes at this time, so we wanted to make sure to note that. And at this time, I'm going to introduce Aaron Elizondo, who is the Acting Advisor for Operation Support.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sorry, we're going to go back-to-back on long presentations, but stick with me. We'll be together for the ride here. So my name is Aaron Elizondo. I'm the interim of the Office of Operations Support. It's a pleasure to get to talk to you today about our policy process and what we do to ensure that we're working with residents, working with stakeholders, and ensuring that participants, landlords, our community partners are part of this process. So this part of the presentation will review the proposed policy updates for fiscal year 2025-2026. These proposed updates affect the program-specific plans for the Federal Housing Program's Opportunity Home Administrators. Those two programs, the first one is the traditional Housing Choice Voucher Program, so Section 8, as well as special voucher programs. The second is the Public Housing Program, and that is recorded in our Admissions and Continued Occupancy Plan. If I say that several times through this presentation, it'll add 10 minutes, so I'm just going to refer to it as the ACOP. So we align our public comment period with the MTW plan because we submit it together. This is a lot of information that Ayanna already covered, so I won't go through that again. I would just like to make sure that we note during the public comment period, participants, staff, and community members are encouraged to submit feedback and let us know how we can improve our policies. This slide is really just a high-level overview of the main objectives in our policy development. This is a year-round process for the Office of Operations Support. We are actively looking at HUD guidance, the Public and Indian Housing Office that issues regulatory guidance to ensure that we're in compliance and formulating policy that improves our policy plans for Opportunity Home. So again, just a high level of the main objectives in our policy development. Ultimately, the policy process aims to better align with Opportunity Home's mission and vision to improve the lives of our residents and ensure a high quality of life for our families. If you're familiar with Schoolhouse Rock, this is always the slide that I say is kind of, you know, how the sausage gets made. So how did we get here? Where did these policies come from are a lot of the questions we get when we go to residents, we go to landlords, participants, and they ask us, where are these policies coming from? So the way we get our guidance or policies really comes from two. The first is the Code of Federal Regulations, which is standard for any public housing agencies and how to administer programs. The second is the office within HUD, which is the Public and Indian Housing, which issues notices that provide regulatory clarification, guidance, recommendations, and new and updated regulations. So we use those two channels to formulate or further define our policies here at Opportunity Home, and we reflect that in the ACOP and the administrative plan for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So the two plans we administer here. Okay, so in your packets, you'll have the full draft summaries of all the policies that we're revising. This is just an example we provide again to the folks that join us at these presentations so we can kind of show them exactly how policies are framed. Really, what I'd like to note is any HUD regulation in any of our plans is usually behind a white background. Opportunity home policy, which is usually further defined or provides us discretionary ability to further define our policies, is a colored background. And then the third option, usually the tricky one, is if it's behind a gray background. That indicates it's an MTW activity that we can further have flexibility on. So if you see that, those are kind of the key to to the program, to the policies. Again, pretty standard, how we, revise our policies. In the draft policy revisions, if there's a strike through, it's omitted text. If it's underlined, we're adding that text just to kind of further clarify what we're doing in our actual policy plans. So we'll get right into it. These policies will be adjusted or proposed in the administrative plan. So again, these are for the voucher programs. This will only affect that program. Opportunity Home proposes to eliminate informal hearings for expired vouchers. This would impact or may impact participants coming into or that are on the program. Current HUD program regulations do not require Opportunity Home to provide informal hearings for expired vouchers. This was actually added in FY 2012-2013, so more than a decade ago. This change would align our policies back with federal regulations and allow staff to focus on required hearings for more serious lease violations, evictions, terminations, and fraud, since they're all scheduled together. The expired vouchers is usually scheduled with those normal informal hearings. The way that we would want to make sure that we continue to address participants that are on the program or applicants would be a consideration of circumstances or good cause reason. If there was a reason why there was an expired voucher, we would submit that through the reasonable accommodation process. That way they would have someone to work with them. Just in case, sometimes we see for expired vouchers, somebody was in the hospital, they weren't able to find it, they would submit a reasonable accommodation and go through that process. A little bit easier than scheduling an informal hearing several months from now. It kind of stalls the process a little bit. And just to give you an idea, in 2024, we scheduled almost 670 informal hearings. That's really with 2 people doing formal hearings. Our next policy is MTW activity, 2019 local implementation of the essentially to really just kind of condense what the policies, what we're doing with the policy, due to OPMA and recent updates to our payment standards. This portion of the activity is no longer needed, so it's obsolete. We want to remove that from our policy so that we eliminate redundancies or any policies that are confusing. So removing that from our policy due to an MTW activity. Our next proposed admin plan revision is for family obligations. We wanted to add this. This was actually feedback we received from participants and landlords during the last public comment period. So we worked throughout the year to implement a proposed policy for guests being included in not engaging in violent or drug-related criminal activity. Currently, our policy only covers participants. We want to make sure that's included in our policy. It's an added protection for residents to promote health, safety, and right to peaceful enjoyment for where folks are living. Okay, so our next proposed admin plan revision is for the College and University Homeless Assistance Program. This is a program within the assisted housing program. This would allow participants to may be eligible for continued assistance past the time-limited amount, which we're proposing would be 6 months. The current policy stipulates that graduation results in immediate end of participation. So it's an added flexibility to program participants that if they need an additional 6 months of assistance, we would be there to help them. Continuing on, this next admin plan revision is for removal from the wait list, and this would be for the HCV wait list. This update may affect applicants and program participants. The change would allow Opportunity Home to remove participants currently receiving assistance through the Housing Choice Voucher. This would not apply to participants in a time-limited program. So for instance, the program, the College and University Homeless Assistance Program, would not be affected under this policy revision. Essentially, an example of this would be when a person already has a voucher, they see that a wait list opens, and it may be the same one that they've already, excuse me. I need some water. So essentially, if a person already has a voucher, if they're applying to be on the same wait list, we would take them off because they're already being served through the voucher program. Okay, so this next admin plan revision is for reexaminations for moves. The new language notes that Opportunity Home may use a previous reexamination. Home may use a previous reexamination or documentation to process a family move. Again, this would expedite voucher process. Expedite voucher process during the abatement period and cut down on paperwork. Okay, so the next admin plan revision, Opportunity Home has elected not to be scored by HUD's Section 8 Management Assistance Program rating system. Instead of CMAP, Opportunity Home has opted to use a variation of the HUD indicators to measure performance. So due to our MTW flexibility, we wouldn't have to go under the standard CMAP rating system. The next admin plan revision would be, or proposed policy revision would be for the mainstream program. Due to a PIH notice that was issued by the Office of Public and Indian Housing, they asked us for several regulatory changes that were detailed in that notice. So it further defines voucher terms and extensions. We also wanted to notate in our policy the partnerships that we have through this program, which are the Center for Healthcare Services and the Alamo Area Council of Governments.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
Would you like us to wait until you do all of it to ask questions, or would you prefer us to ask as we go?
We can go for questions right now.
So I have a question about the reexamination for moves.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any concern, I know it says may, which gives the flexibility to do it or not. Is there any concern that, I think the policy, I think I'm answering my own question, but I just want to confirm, should the move information be really old and you need to verify, this doesn't limit you from the ability to go verify anything or update any documents, right?
Yes, so the policy does stipulate that we may use reexamination. So we have a current policy that we undergo reexaminations every 3 years.
Okay.
Stephanie, if I say anything crazy, please step in. But it would be using the similar supporting documentation that they would be already submitting. It would just not be a formality to have those documents resubmitted and prolong the process.
Got it.
So a big part of this policy is whenever a unit final fails for inspection, we have to issue a voucher to a family to move. The current policy states that we have to do a recertification with the household, which means they have to do all the paperwork again, get all their income information, verifications, bank statements. And that's sometimes can be lengthy, especially for maybe a disabled person who's having trouble getting their award letter. And so what this policy says that as long as it's not, their recertification is not technically due, if we're not able to get the paperwork, we can get their voucher issued faster. We will probably still do a recertification. We can get their voucher issued faster. We will probably still do a recertification, but that way we don't delay, because the abatement period is, remember, only 60 days.
Yeah.
After that, they're responsible for that full amount of rent.
Okay.
And if we can't get their voucher to them quickly to move,
Yeah.
then they may end up paying $1,000 and only be able to afford $100.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you.
Well,
As long as we're doing questions, I have some.
yeah. Well,
As long as we're doing questions, I have some.
yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Gabe, if you have others. Go ahead, Gabe, if you have others.
With regards to ACOP in section 2.2E, with regards to the, reasonable accommodation responses, I see that we moved it from 10 business days to 30 calendar days. We feel we're adequately staffed to accommodate that. Because I know that, those are typically some of the responses that we would see at the board level. Where, we asked for requests and it hasn't been reviewed. So we feel confident with that?
Yes, I haven't got to that policy yet, but we do have a little bit more explanation of why it would be industry standard to go to 30 days. Let me get
Okay.
there really quick. For the 30 days to 10, so our current policy is for 10 business days. The adjustment would be for 30 calendar days. This policy would allow us additional time to provide missing or incomplete documentation
Not that
to fulfill reasonable accommodation requirements. In 2024, we received 47 reasonable accommodations. 2023, it was 874. So we've seen that trend continually build up. Essentially, we're trying to make sure that we do a little bit better job. A period where we render a decision, if documentation, if get a letter from a knowledgeable professional, it's that we deny reasonable accommodation. The extra days would allow that person to work. So if there is a accommodation that's needed, have those extra days for them to work that process and submit that, because it's really hard to get a doctor's response in 10 days. I think all of us are able to have an example of that happening. So it's really enforced times in our 10. We deny it on 5-10 days after we get the letter and it's approved, and they have to
No, we appreciate
redo the entire application.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Commissioner Powell?
My request around the CMAP, our performance as an agency, regulating exemption and how our awarded. And I just wanted to kind of call attention to we are adequately communicating to our how our requirements, but also that I think it's not going to get any easier to rely on HUD to provide updated information. And I have a follow-on question regarding expectations that we'll get any review from HUD, knowing that the majority of staff is being let go in many programs. So that might be for a final question. But so really just a comment about making sure that we figured out how to communicate our performance, and then whether we have any expectation that we'll receive any kind of feedback or regulatory guidance from an agency where in some programs, 80 to 90% of staff is being eliminated.
Thank you. Yeah, and I believe for the CMAP policy proposal, it would allow the flexibility that we may use some of the indicators that have part of that rating system, but it will also allow opportunity home to use. I know in the past we've had an organizational scorecard. We've had other indicators that we've been able to use to measure performance.
Thank you.
Thank you for bearing with me. This is the first time I've been able to talk with y'all, so the jitters are definitely still there.
You're doing great. I was like, this is a lot of policy. Do you want us to interrupt as you go? So.
Thank y'all. Okay, let's go. Here are the fun policies. These are the ones that align with both the admin plan, so the voucher program, and the ACOP for the public housing program, so these will be in both plans if it's passed. That first one, as Commissioner Lopez already brought up, it's for the reasonable accommodations. Again, we're really just, is to try to still meet that 10-day process to issue out those that are pretty cut and dry, and it's clearly a reasonable accommodation, has all the supporting documentation. The additional 30 calendar days would be for those that need some extra assistance, whether it's getting a knowledgeable professional letter, some of the other requirements that are part of the reasonable accommodation process. Also, internally, we have up to 3 staff members that review RAs so that it's not one person that's just denying. So sometimes that also goes past the 10 days, so we're just making sure that for some of those reasonable accommodations that need another set of eyes to look at, that we're really going through those submissions and providing a response timely.
Have we ever done in our audits, I don't know that I've ever seen when we do the audits, have we ever audited the reasonable accommodation response decisions?
Not to my knowledge, but great question. I'd be happy to follow up on that.
Thank you.
Question on RAs. Once a resident has received a reasonable accommodation for one property, moves to another property, does that move with them, or they? Because I understand that they have to go through the process all over again at the new property.
I don't believe once a reasonable accommodation, I do believe based on what it's for, it would carry over. The only thing that I can think of would be maybe we do get reasonable accommodations for park accessibility. That may be something that would have to formally go through the process depending on the property.
So depending on the program, the voucher program, if you move, you have to revalidate any reasonable accommodation that may be needed as a part of that move unless it's readily known. So if the person says, well, I need a ground floor unit in a wheelchair, right, then that's visibly verifiable. We don't have to do all the extra paperwork. If it's, I need an extra bedroom for medical, then yes, we do have to redo the verification for that extra bedroom. Under public housing, you would normally have to redo reasonable accommodations when you move to a it's a part of that prior to that move that you normally do as a part of your transfer request. And it, again, if it's readily known, we don't have to do the third-party verifications. And so that is one of the things we're also looking at currently for the reasonable accommodation reviews, is can we say immediately that we don't have to revalidate, like these are, if it's a known going to be continued, it's not a temporary, they are looking at that to try not to cut down on that paperwork.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Always coming to my rescue. Okay, so our next ACOP and admin plan policy revision is for informal hearings. This would allow us to adjust our policy, which is currently 10 business days, to 15 business days. This policy would align with other public housing agencies of our size. So we did have policy analysts do research, considering how many informal hearings we receive. That would be ideal for the size of this public housing agency. It's also the recommended standard by housing organizations of any size. So we took that into consideration as well for this policy revision. Our next ACOP and admin plan revision is the local residency preference. The policy may affect applicants and will establish a local residency preference for the San Antonio area. The local residency preference would allow Opportunity Home to prioritize the housing needs of here in San Antonio. So whether you currently live here, work in, or are hired to work in San Antonio, you would receive that preference. This next policy revision actually is just inserting old policy language due to restarting the early engagement program, that MTW activity that Ayana covered earlier in the presentation. This is just that old policy language that used to be ACOP and admin plan for the program, essentially stipulating that an applicant or someone who is from the wait or drawn off the wait list would be subject to briefings unless they had a accommodation or consideration of circumstance would allow them to miss that briefing.
I have a question about the one prior, sorry. How does people who apply to port their, port into San Antonio? What is it called? It's like the
Portability?
They port, yeah. How is that the preference for San Antonio residents and?
Okay, so I'll answer that one. So the policy is for applicants who are not on the program. Under portability, they're already current residents, so there is no preference under portability. Our organization is going to or bill, and so it's separate since in the sense they're already being assisted. It's just moving from a different city that allows that assistance to be transferred.
So in essence, someone who's porting in, if when a unit becomes available, is kind of at the top of the list because they're already being served.
So portability is only for the vouchers, so not necessarily public housing side, and it would be if we have vouchers that are available under our ACC, and we could absorb them. But if we don't, and we want to continue to assist the people off our waiting list, we could then bill that housing authority. They could still use the voucher here, but that other housing authority would pay the HAP and the administrative fees to our organization to administer that voucher. That will continue to work with our residents.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're getting towards the promise. The last are just proposed ACOP revisions. Again, this will be the policy document that we administer the public housing program. So these would only affect public housing, the public housing residents and applicants. The first change is for in regards to determining bedroom size. This update would align what our current policy is for the assisted housing program. So for the voucher program, it clarifies that Opportunity Home may allow a living room to be used as a sleeping space, but no more than 2 persons may occupy that space. This flexibility allows families to stay in place if the family does not want to move. In addition, in case of emergency transfers, a family can move into a smaller unit if occupancy standards are maintained as a last resort. So this is not something that we're doing as a standard. It's just really for unique cases where a family maybe adds someone to their household as a household member. They do not want to move, but they are still within occupancy standards. Or if there's an emergency transfer where we need to move a family, we would be able to use that flexibility to ensure that they are able to be in that unit.
A question regarding that, would this policy allow someone who needs more regular care to have a caregiver stay in this space if they need that for a period of time?
So traditionally, if we were adding someone like as a live-in aid to a unit, that would allow them to have a dedicated extra bedroom for them. That would not be the case for using the living room as a sleeping room. That would be an issue as far as from my perspective. Our next policy for the ACOP policy is the update regarding the number of unit offers. This affect applicants. This change would allow Opportunity Home to extend up to 2 unit offers to applicants instead of only 1. So our current policy is that if you are extended a unit offer and you reject it, then you would roll off the wait list. This would allow someone the opportunity to see another unit before that happens. So it's just providing more opportunities for families to find a unit. And I believe this is the last one for just the ACOP. So this is a proposed update, again, in regards to the early engagement program. This would allow Opportunity Home to remove someone from the wait list if they were not, if they failed to attend the early engagement program briefing. Again, if there was a consideration of circumstances or something that didn't allow them to attend, that we would work with them, but this is just a general statement to remove those that fail to attend a briefing. As is customary, we also have proposed revisions to the public housing lease. Those are also part of the public comment period, and we allow residents to provide feedback. So this is, again, in relation to those that are in the public housing program. The first is in reference to drug-related criminal activities. The new language would be added to the lease to clarify that drug paraphernalia may be used when assessing circumstances of drug-related criminal activity. This update is aimed at keeping residents safe throughout Opportunity Homes public housing communities.
Comment. When it comes to drugs and everything, and it's in there, you know, that if you are involved with drugs or whatever, it's an eviction. But it doesn't happen, and I will tell you that, you know, drugs are a daily thing. You walk into your units, you smell marijuana, you smell smoking, people are coming in and being brought up to the stairwells instead of the main entrance where the cameras are, and so things are going on. Staff doesn't know about it because it happens after hours and on the weekends. It's in the lease. Why isn't this being, you know, taken care of, or there aren't measures being taken to eliminate this?
I think that's something we can work with our public housing leadership to better gauge and understand, so that we're able to hold residents accountable. I think this policy revision also allows us, if you do walk in a unit and you see drugs, you can also use, if you see a syringe or anything else that would be considered paraphernalia, that it would be other evidence or further information to be able to relate through the actual channels through the public housing program. Ruth?
Hi, thank you. I'd like to interject, and I appreciate those comments. And they're not uncommon when we hear them out in the field and when they are escalated to leadership. So we have been, and we continue to take direction to address those, whether it's through our resident manager meeting to invite feedback from our residents, working with the Director of Security. I'm happy to say that we have, I know Joanna's here, but we have an effort to know what's happening, especially after hours. There have been intrusion cameras that have been implemented or installed in our elderly disabled communities. This year, there's going to be a second phase where we'll be installing cameras at our family properties. So there are done in phases. In addition to that, I know that our security right now has particular properties where we have on-site security, especially after in the evenings, starting from 5 p.m. all the way to 5 a.m., and to include the weekends, especially for our high-rises. In addition to that, we also have our security safe officer that does respond, TLS does respond when we have on-site emergencies that are happening, whether it's a criminal trespass warning or there's disturbances in progress. It is something that will continue to work with our community, with engaging our sector to address those concerns. But yes, are there opportunities that we can still do better? And just as a follow-up, when we do conduct the investigations and we have evidence that there is violations, then we are back to business. So whether that's doing a lease violation, having mediation, CDI to coach the residents, up to if we need to move legal, especially for serious matters.
I just want to know one thing. What protection do you have established for property management? Because there's been an issue, like rate for families that are, I'm personally dealing with something like that in one of our properties, and it's not, I feel that we have to take some type of accountability of Opportunity Home. There's so much evidence of what's happening in the property, and it's like, what's the turnover rate? Like, it's already to the point where I have to wait for me and my children to come to my home for this person to do, and it's endangering other people's lives. So what's the turnover of, if someone reports with evidence, like, if there is, when is there gonna be a response from Opportunity Home? Because it makes me feel it's like, are we part of the problem as well? And if we're not addressing these issues, it's endangering the lives of families, of our tenants, of our seniors, of our, everybody. And so it's quite, it's getting me a little bit upset, because it's like, I have a year's worth of evidence and nothing has. And so now it's like at the point, and it's like, it's not just happening at my property, it's happening at the hot spots that there is. It's like, I've even had to put myself in a place that as a mother, I have to protect my children. And it's upsetting because it's like, okay, so what else can I do? Like, I have film, I have it right here in my phone. And so it's like, it's been over a year. These people are bringing in our cars have been broken into ever since. Now the property manager is not being, what are we doing to protect them as well? Because then there's retaliation, right? And it's like, oh, I don't know if this person is gonna follow me at the end of the day because they're doing the drug deals right outside off of El Paso Street in Colorado. And it's just like, at what time do we take accountability, including myself? What else can I do? Or what can we not addressing these issues? There's cameras at Legacy on, but it's like, okay, so when? Are we gonna wait for a family to be hurt, a child, another death at our property? What?
I understand your frustration, and I know that Domingo just joined us, but you are correct. When evidence can be anywhere to be with written statements, video, eyewitness reports, and when we capture that information, that allows us to build our case, along with employing or reaching out to SAPD or having our TLS officer write a report. I the direct details about what you're experiencing, but I can feel your frustration, your pain, and your panic. So I'm happy to meet with you after this. But yes, we do implore and encourage residents to speak up and to speak out, and we do have a responsibility to address that and execute the lease, especially if residents or their guests are compromising health and safety of the community or removing or threatening the peaceful enjoyment by the residents or the staff.
I think from what I heard, maybe this is an opportunity for the team to revisit. I think there's a station to make sure that commissioners' needs get met. But in terms of like this change is helpful, that the new language will clarify paraphernalia may be when assessing circumstances of drug-related criminal activity. My wondering is there other language that might be helpful that isn't included in this revision that will help the organization more efficiently and effectively handle drug-related criminal activity complaints?
Commissioner, if I can just add to Commissioner Garcia's comment, she's at Legacy at Alazan. It's not managed by Opportunity Home, it's managed by a third-party developer. We still should take ownership of that relationship and ensure that there are security measures that the third-party developer is taking to ensure that residents at that property are feeling. So with that, I'm not sure if Miranda, if you have anything to add. Miranda oversees our affordable housing communities and also our partnerships. And I know she works with the third-party developers as well.
Yeah, so this policy specifically touches on our public housing units, but as you know, we have 8 or 9 funding programs that we work through, and so it's really important that we take proactive measures regardless of what your affordability standard is. And so I do, yes, oversee Legacy at Alazan. It is in my portfolio. I will have a conversation with that regional as soon as we're done here. I could get some, I'm not aware of the situation, I apologize, and so if I could get some pertinent details, I will make sure that this happens. It is not uncommon. We are trying to we have to operate very finely in landlord-tenant law, but when we have constant and credible ways that we can move forward on termination, that's the way that we go. And I have given implicit permission, and I don't want to say, I've just been encouraging our third-party companies to enforce their lease provisions. So enforce your lease, enforce your lease, enforce your lease. And it's happening. I'm sorry to hear that, and I will make sure that that does. But the challenge is it's not just you, I'm sure, that has the complaint. You know, I'm here addressing you right now, but I know that this is, we have to look at this holistically. And so how do we do that, right? If we could have a conversation, I would be absolutely thrilled to do so with you. Okay?
I wasn't speaking specifically about this particular, we manage another constituent of the team on, this is us trying to separate things.
To what kind of change?
We can
Okay.
Okay. Part two, we want to make sure that our staff to be able to do this. Part two, we want to make sure that our staff to be able to do this.
Take that.
Focus group of residents are dealing with it. It's an internal thing that they dealing with it. It's an internal thing that they raise as an issue, and we have that documented somewhere. For drug-related, for residents who have been impacted by drug-related activity, who have had to go, including working and not working, to help make sure.
So I'll defer a bit to Ayana on resident feedback through the input, but not specifically with any families that were evicted because of these.
No, I'm not talking
acts.
about families evicted. I'm
Okay.
talking about people who might have been the people bringing light to it.
Oh, I see. Not specifically. No, we didn't go to those individuals. And it was the open feedback for these changes that were.
I mean, that might be helpful to you, right?
That is a good
Because, you know, I'm not talking about the people who you know, were
impacted.
evicted. I mean, that they've obviously violated and deserve whatever consequence of that. I'm talking about folks who may have been the reporting party and were having to go through the process and, you know, use the policy and whatnot to create safety for their families. In the future, that might be a group of people who could be insightful on, like, hey, when this happens, this is the policy y'all follow as an organization, we follow as an organization, and here's what's helpful about it, and here's what's not helpful about it.
We'll take that into our process.
Awesome, thank you.
And it was mentioned that they're going to update cameras and stuff, but I know that in buildings, a lot of the camera systems were completely taken off from the hallways and the stairwells and only at the elevator exit, at the elevators and at the main entry door. That's why a lot of people bring people through the stairwells and then they bring them through the hallways. And there's no proof, or the staff cannot look back and see that, because I know that we report these issues when they see them to the staff, but there's really nothing they can't do because they can't see where they came or where they went to. And so I know cameras is a good defense, and I've always talked about cameras, but you know, if we're going to tackle this situation, our staff needs the materials or the things to be able to do what they need to do.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's an excellent point, and we've already addressed that. It was a prior administration that would not allow certain places for cameras, but now we have a RFP that's been floated, and myself and Joanna are working on this, and that's specifically the areas that we're looking at. It's not just the stairwells, the exterior doors, but also some of the laundry rooms. So it's going to give us a much more clear perspective on who's coming in, the locations where these unauthorized individuals have a tendency to come in. And as it relates to your concerns, I do welcome the opportunity. I thank Miranda because she relaxed our ability to be able to work with outside managed properties. We can offer them a lot of information and guidance on how they can proceed. Sort of like mimic our rapid response team where the legal department, management, and security come together and actually evaluate all of the evidence. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Could I also request, and I feel that over the past 6 to 8 months, we've really moved into more of a collaborative relationship at multiple levels with other units of government, with other types of agencies, and even looking progressively at what we could do within a regulatory context at the state and federal level. That as we're getting suggestions that may not be within our control, that we keep kind of a running tab of a wish list of what we would like to see other agencies or units of government, changes that they could make that would make it easier for us to administer or respond quickly, so that when we do have events like housing policy updates or community-wide discussions over legislative agendas, that we have suggestions that would help with our operations. Only if it's nice.
You hit a huge one. The narcotics investigators that we collaborate with many times are frustrated because HUD for many years had a policy that they do not allow us to use drug paraphernalia as a reason for eviction. So we welcome the assistance from this board. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Domingo. I'd like to just add, the feedback we've been getting is extremely helpful. I know we still have a couple more slides, but it's helpful to have you all understand that we have policy analysts, that it's their job to continually research what other PHAs are doing, how we can equip ourselves to ensure that residents and participants feel safer. So all these suggestions are things that we'll go back and use this next policy process to continually make our policy better and improve what we're doing to ensure the safety and peaceful environment of the folks that are within our programs and in our communities.
Thank you.
And I know we're having some trouble with the presentation here, so I don't think it's letting me go back, but we are at the accidental discharge of a firearm policy revision. The lease part 2 will be updated to state that residents may be terminated for accidental firearm discharge at Opportunity Homes Public Housing Communities. And again, just intended to increase safety for all of our residents. Our next proposed lease revision is for upholding evictions after a transfer. New language will be added to the lease to clarify that if a notice to vacate is issued to a resident, it will be upheld at any property they transfer to while the case is still pending. This may affect residents and ensures that residents cannot evade the consequences of violating their lease agreement by transferring to another property. And then hopefully the easiest policy revision we get through is concerning or in reference to garage/yard sale. New language will be added to the lease to allow residents to hold garage/yard sales if they request approval through their community manager and have applicable permits required by local law. And
This is so insignificant because it's a garage sale in the grand scheme of things. But I'm just going to ask, it's like, these are the types of things where it depends on who your community manager is and how are they making, like if there isn't some sort of consistent guidance for community managers on, how to handle that, when to say yes, when to say no, how many and all of that. So are we providing them with any guidance so that there's consistency in decision-making and we kind of protect ourselves from discretionary decision-making that could be biased and, create issues?
Absolutely. I think you're correct. It does sometimes depend on the property manager. We are working to issue some guidance on what will be allowable, what are the best, most proactive ways to allow residents to maybe do it all at once so that you're not having a garage sale every single Saturday. So I think it's going to be that consistency that helps us navigate that.
Yeah.
This was actually one of those policies that we got feedback not only from property managers but residents. They were trying to find a little bit more guidance on what was allowable, what they were able to do, and having approval system, as well as having, any applicable, law, permits to have a garage yard sale really helps kind of standardize the process a little bit more.
Awesome.
I know I've been extremely long. Ayana, did you want to go over this slide? Okay, go for it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, so thank you so much. Where we're at right now, as I mentioned earlier, so this, as I mentioned, we're currently under the public comment period. It will end on the 28th. So up until that time, we are asking for feedback. We are, again, as we've done today, we're hearing all of the comments that are out there and seeing if there's anything that will change our current draft. If there are any current changes to the draft, that will be, and again, this will have to go to the board for final approval. So that will be brought to you on April 2nd. And then April 15th is the deadline that we have to submit this plan to HUD. Again, through May and June, we'll work with HUD, and I know there's a concern about who's going to be reviewing this. We also share a little bit of concern, and that's where we're trying to allow ourselves as much time to go ahead to have as much time as they need to review this plan. So again, if it gets according to schedule, we would implement July 1. We have had, I think our plan last year did go a little bit past July 1 before we got final approval from HUD. That does happen from time to time.
Michael, a little bit of clarification then, because honestly, today, if we could approve it, if your comment period not ended until the end of this month.
Correct.
We can just do it. Our approval today will be for a consent item for the April 2nd meeting. Okay.
Correct, yes,
Okay.
and exactly, and if there are any changes at that time, I will bring those forward.
Okay.
So, again,
Great.
are there any other questions?
Can you remind me your name? Aaron Elizondo. Aaron Elizondo, thank you. A new name to memorize.
One quick question on the early engagement program. Who provides the training? Is that our existing staff?
No, so we work with our partners. So in the past, we've had St. Mary's School of Law provide finance rights. We've had the Financial Empowerment Center provide the financial literacy course. We've had the Antonio provide the housekeeping. And I'm trying to think what the last one was. I don't know why it just escaped. But again, all of the resource fair partners are partners. So again, yes, we work collaboratively with our partners in the community.
Great, thank you.
Any-
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, does it say any other questions?
I am
With that, I'll take, that will approve consent.
I motion we approve the MTW plan to consent.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
So moved.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, consent in April. Item number 5, Resolution 6728, authorizing the San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation to approve inducement resolutions for the proposed tax credit and tax exempt bond financing of the Pearsall Place Apartments. Lorraine Robles, Chief Real Estate Development Officer.
Good afternoon. And just as a refresher, I wanted to let you know that the next 4 items are all real estate deals involving 4% LIHTC or tax credits along with bonds. These projects will come before you at least 3 times. So the first would be for approval for bond inducement, which allows the project to move forward with an application to seek bond funding. The second would be where we ask for permission to move forward with negotiations with our developer, to then become a general partner in the deal, and to start negotiating the MOU. And then finally, the third time is for final approval of the business terms as well as the financing of the project. So as we go through each of these 4 projects, I'll let you know where they stand within the status of, or the process, approval process for the board. So this
Can I, before I forget, make a request? I think we've made this request before, but can we get, we have that spreadsheet for the development side stuff. Can we get a that has thing that's under, like, these are bond inducement approved, where is it at? Is it bond inducement? Is it negotiations? Is it final? Do we have, is that
So
that?
And
Oh,
what
yay,
what
okay.
we're going to do is for our April committee meeting, we want to try to simplify it further. And so we're working on a different part that maybe might help illustrate how these projects move through the process.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe that just ease of, for our eyes. say,
Exactly.
It's at this part of the process. That way we know
Exactly.
what's
Yeah,
going on.
thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So this first one is Pearsall Place. And this particular project is brought to us by LDG Development. In our audience today is Drew Children. He's a development manager for the project. This project came before you in October for bond inducement, and it was approved to submit an application for bond funding. The property site is located at Southwest Loop 410 and Old Pearsall Road, and surrounded by amenities such as restaurants, parks, and schools. It sits within City Council District 4 and is serviced by Southwest ISD. It's proposed 252 units, all at 70% of AMI and below. And what this means is that we're going to have a mix of units that will allow for down to 30% of AMI units. The unit mix will be 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4-bedroom units. And again, it's being financed by, along with bonds. Here's a breakdown of the pro forma. Land costs approximately $3 million, construction costs approximately $47 million, and soft costs of approximately $26 million, for a total development cost of $75.2 million. This project did receive a bond reservation in February in the amount of $40 million, and it has a hard closing deadline of August 20th. This means that we have to move forward with our negotiations and financing and hit that and hopefully close before the deadline, but we have to close at least by that deadline. And so today I'm asking for approval to move forward to the April board for final approval to begin those negotiations.
Do we have any questions, commissioners, for this one? And again, as a reminder, this is for an inducement, so it pushes it down the process. You will see it again. Just at LDG Development, are they here today?
Yes, they are. Drew?
Okay. Where are y'all based out of?
Our Texas
Microphone. No. The microphone will need to pick you up.
Oh, thank you. Our Texas office is based up in Austin, and but our corporate headquarters in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay.
We've been around for over 25 years. One of the top leading affordable housing developers. We strictly do the exempt bond cycle with 4% LIHTC credits, and 22,000 units in our portfolio, all throughout the country, and just a little less than half of that in Texas. We've got majority of our portfolio here in Texas, in the major metropolitan areas, Austin, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio.
Okay. Good, thank you. Just a question.
And before we move to a vote, I wanted to know if you wanted to take this next one, because it's Emberstone Apartments, and it's being brought to us by Kittle Properties. And our audience is Carly Gast, and she's our development director for the project. Emberstone is a 4% bond deal. Bond inducement was approved by the board in October of 2024. The property is north of 14,970 Watson Road, so right Highway 16 by Toyota and Texas A&M. It sits within City 4 and is serviced by Southwest ISD. Total units being proposed are 228, with a mix of 30% AMI and 60% AMI unit. Unit mix will consist of 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4-bedroom units. The pro forma breakdown: land costs of approximately $3 million, construction costs of approximately $32 million, and soft costs of approximately $23 million, for a total development cost of $58 million. This particular project received a reservation in January, which was much earlier than anticipated. And because of negotiations with entitlements of the property, the reservation was returned. However, the developer plans to resubmit a bond application before the end of this month. And it's anticipated that the Texas Bond Review Board will be able to come back to this project by summer. Today, we're asking again for approval to negotiate an MOU and act as general partner in this development project.
Similar unit, well, I guess the unit counts are similar, but
And you know
per
why?
unit costs are a little different. Might want to talk to their DC. Sorry, guys, I just happened to notice that with the cost. Any questions with regards to these inducements? If not, I'll take a motion.
So move to the board meeting.
Actually, on these,
It's today.
Or we-
No, these will,
Because these would
yeah,
go
we're
to-
going to ask for permission to move to the board on consent. And you will see both of these one more once we come back for
After
final
that.
approval.
Right, once the deals are determined. So you can continue with your motion.
So move to the board meeting.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Items 5 and 6 are approved to consent.
Thank you.
Item number 7, Resolution 732, authorizing the Los Vadas Public Facility Corporation multifamily housing revenue notes for River Breeze Apartments to approve a resolution, also 25 LVPFC-03-04, authorizing the notes for San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation to also approve a resolution, 25 FAC-03-03, authorizing its participation in the River Breeze Apartments transaction. Other matters connection therewith. Lorraine, you're back up.
Thank you. So this is River Breeze, and this is also brought to us by Kittle Properties. This one, though, you've seen twice before, in June of 2024 for bond inducement, and then in December for approval to start negotiations of an MOU and to agree to be a general partner in the deal. Has a Texas portfolio of approximately 20 properties totaling close to 3,000 units. So lots of work done in Texas. Location of River Breeze Apartment, Southwest Loop 410 and Palo Alto Road. So right outside 410 and right along Highway 16. It sits within City Council District 4 and is serviced by Southwest ISD. It consists of 14 acres and proposes 264 units. And again, this is going to be a mix of 50s, 60s, and 70% AMI units. The mix is also similar to those that you just saw, with consisting of 1, 2, and 3, and 4 bedrooms. Perform a breakdown, land cost at $2.5 million, construction cost at $41.4 million, and soft cost at $18 million, for a total development cost of $62.3 million. As mentioned, they received their reservation in November of 2024, and so they have a hard closing deadline of April 30th. But we are shooting for, I believe, April 18th for this particular deal?
Yeah, mark it.
April 10th, there we go. So way ahead of the deadline. And so today we're asking to move forward to the April board for final approval on consent. And this will be the first property that we do with Kittle, if approved.
Any questions from the board with regards to this property, the River Breeze? None? If that, I'll take a motion.
I move we add this to the agenda for April.
Well, yeah, okay. We have a motion? Take a second. First and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7 passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kittle. I appreciate it. Kittle Properties. Item 8, consideration appropriate action regarding Resolution 6737, inducing the participation of San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation to serve as the sole member of the general partner, landowner, and general contractor for the Lakeside Lofts transaction, and authorizing all filings and agreements with the TDHCA in connection with applications for low-income housing tax credits, and authorizing the negotiation and execution of a memorandum of understanding and other matters in connection therewith. Lorraine, you're still up.
Thank you. Lakeside Lofts, another 4% deal. This is similar to the first two items, 5 and 6, in that We are looking for to move forward with negotiations of an MOU and to become general partner in the deal. The project received a board approval of bond inducement in October of 2024. They actually just received their bond reservation yesterday. And in anticipation of receiving that reservation is what brought us to the board today, or to the committee today. They were approved for $40 million in bonds, and their hard closing date is September 13th. So we really need to move on this. Lakeside Lofts is located at 5606 US Highway East. It sits within 2 in a service ISD. It proposes approximately 300 units ranging in AM 60 and 70%, and then carries a mix of 1s, 2s, units. And costs of approximately $5.5 million, construction costs $47 million, and soft costs about $38 million, for a total development cost of $90.8 million. Today, we're asking for approval to move forward to the April consent agenda for approval to start negotiations and participate as general partner.
Do we have any questions from the board with to item number 8, resolution 6737? With none, I'll take a motion. We have a first, do we have a second?
Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 6737 passes. And the approximate
Hired, his name is Isaiah. All right, developed by NR Public Housing. The aged payable 5%. So but if we the aged payable 5%. So but if we don't do so, we don't do so. Subordinate. So sorry, that's basically what I just said. And so we've been in intensive conversation. Asset management team and I from NRP. Been in intensive conversation. Asset management team and I from NRP. We're going to be paying $91,000 from reserves. We're going to be paying $91,000 from reserves. Next slide, please. $91,000 from reserves. Next slide, please. Reserves. Next slide, please. NRP is going to be putting in $3 million. We are half of that, and $3 million. We are half of that, and and they've already Intel at a time that we can fired, and then it will be paid from the waterfall as we can fired, and then it will be paid from the waterfall as applicable.
Management or of the facilities that led to the drop in occupancy and to the inability to make the payments out of operating that necessitate bringing in this loan.
It was just one.
That necessitate bringing in this loan.
It was just one. It's a perfect storm. Right? Where properties must be at sub 93, 94%. Plea doesn't work. Plea doesn't work. Storm that's able to our organization. Then
you don't need buying the future properties or future.
And so we've been on calls. We've done proactive stuff, looking at concessions, looking at our curb appeal. How is it that we can turn these properties? And it really is the NRP. I can say has done a good job getting us where we need to be. Is it perfect? No, but we're going there.
Well, with regards to all of our assets.
Yes.
And just with all our developer partners and those that are still in the room, that's important to us. As we maintain reserves, leasability and so on and so forth. Intent, and when we do these, not necessarily for us to.
It's in about 11 years. 11 years
okay.
is when it's going south.
Those are protections to reacquire, and that is to continue to move the needle within the city. So.
Correct. You have the community square one, so the unit.
Item number 9, item number 10, Resolution 6735, inducing the Rosemount at Highland Park at 1303 Rigsby Avenue. The formation of a limited liability company to serve as landowner, general partner, and/or general contractor for such project, authorizing the negotiation and execution of a term sheet and other matters in connection therewith. Miranda, you're still up.
If possible, may I please take the two items 10 and 11 together because they're a joint project, if you will, and I have one presentation for you today.
Absolutely. So along with this one, we'll do Resolution 6736, the Costa Valencia Apartments. Go on.
All right, thank you. Okay, so Rosemont and Costa Valencia Apartments. Next slide, Devlin, please. So this is a history of the transaction. So on March 6th, the Board of Commissioners approved Resolution 6720 and 6735, authorizing the sale of both apartments and the formation of a public-private partnership. So now I am here to request permission to go with step 2 of the transaction. So very similar to the deals that we are creating when we are disposing of projects, we have to do is kind of a multi-step. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, go back. I apologize, Devin. So what we were looking for is I am requesting approval to move forward on the term sheet and move forward with the partnership structure where we will be, Opportunity Home will be the general partner in the deal. And so these will go through a resyndication via it's not really a resyndication. I need to come up with a better word for it. It's a PFC structure where it will, they'll have redevelopment, leveraged new debt, and the property will go back into the asset management partnership portfolio and will live there for the next 15 years. And that's where the location is. So this is, they will act as the developer operator. They provide all of the guarantees. And then all contracts have been negotiated with the standards of the organization's deal term sheets. So as per Commissioner Powell's question prior, all of this has been looked at is what we currently know to be the quote-unquote chinks in the armor have been addressed.
Great. Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
The restructuring of the transaction doesn't affect the affordability period, or does it extend it?
So that's where we're going right now to the, stay tuned.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. So the affordability period, so the current affordability is 100% of the units at 60% AMI. That will remain in place for an additional 13 years. So it's for a 30-year term. We have 13 more left. And then this represents the remainder of the current LIHTC affordability period. After that point, because we are utilizing MTW dollars, there will be and we're doing it under a PFC transaction, there will be an additional, so right now we're layering a 30-year LORA by the time, so it will be for an additional, we'll restrict the units at 10% of the units at 60% and 40% of the units at 80%. So for the next 40 years, this property will have affordability on it.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Anyone? Okay. I'll take a motion.
So move.
We have a first. We have a second.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Items 10 and 11 are approved.
Thank you.
Looks like item number 12, Resolution 6738, authorizing the expenditure of additional funds for ongoing Wi-Fi connectivity services at various communities to Get Wireless Incorporated, DBA Dojo, for an amount not to exceed $500,000 through October 2026. Muriel stepping in. Good to see you.
Muriel is stepping in. Unfortunately, Joanna is under the weather, so I will be providing this presentation for you. So to give you a little bit of history, back in December of 2021, we got approval from y'all to basically expand our wireless programs to include our properties and provide wireless and broadband services there. And we did that for 39 of our properties got fiber, and then 40 of our properties got coax, okay? So that's how we were able to do them. We couldn't do all the properties one way or the other. And so what happened at the time is we requested a 3-year commitment from y'all, and we had specific dollar amounts associated with the installation as well as the connectivity service. And however, what we had to do was go through the implementation process. So each property had to go through an implementation process where we installed either the fiber or the coax. And the way our terms worked with our vendor was that once the property got its installation, then that 3 years would start. So as a result, we had some properties start sooner and some not start till later. And so the last property that we got the installation done on was effective November 1st of 2023. So by that time, we've kind of run out of the approval monies that y'all have given us, because y'all gave us approval monies for 3 years, and the 3 years started back in December of 2021. So what we're asking for today is some additional monies that will basically take us through that remaining 3-year period, which is till October 31st of 2026, so about a year and a half from now. And then at that time, all of the properties will basically be on the same timeline. And what we'll be able to do prior to then either is to go back to our current vendor and negotiate for some additional time, of course, some additional monies to continue the Wi-Fi and the connectivity, or we would go out for an RFP to try to get a new vendor or a new process. We're asking for this basically extension of time and money because at this time it would be a lot more disruptive to bring in a new vendor to kind of go in, put in their stuff, and then start the process from now. This way, we just extend and basically catch all of the properties up to a singular timeline, and then we're able to move forward with all the properties at once. So that is my explanation. The cost we're not expecting to exceed $500,000. It's still in line with all of the terms and pricing we had gotten with the initial 3-year term. So we're not having any types of increase at this time, like per property. And I am available to answer any questions you have.
Any questions with regards to this expenditure?
Were these additional funds budgeted somewhere, or are we saying yes, no to something to say yes to this?
No. So these funds for Wi-Fi are included in our operational accounts for our properties. Funds for Wi-Fi have continued to be included, so these are not additional funds. These are funds that are budgeted.
So when it's funds that are budgeted, why do we have to go through is it because of the contract, the original contract?
Yes, ma'am, because we only got approval from our board for the
procurement.
Right, for 3 years for a certain amount per year.
Got it.
For each of the 3 years.
Got it, okay.
So that was the reason.
Okay.
So we're extending the contract that we have right now.
Correct. It's the same vendor. We're extending the contract and adding some more monies, and we're going through until October 31st of 2026 so that everybody, all of the properties are now on the same kind of like time frame.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item number 12 is approved.
Okay, thank you. And then Commissioner Contreras, you had a question earlier, asked if we had ever done an audit of reasonable accommodations, and the answer is no, we have not. But if that's something that you consider a high-risk area, please note it when you get your lovely,
email?
yes, your lovely email request for the audit plan and your risk assessment, and just let us know there. And then if that rises to the top of you, when we come back with the audit plan, you can let us know at that time, you'd really like us to do that.
I mean, it just made me wonder about, because it's a protected class and, if we've ever just checked to see, I don't know that, I don't have any, evidence to say that it's a high risk, it's more like, it's just a vulnerable space. Got it, thank you.
Agreed, thank you.
Item number 13, consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6729, authorizing the Summit at Crown Ridge transaction, including authorizing Las Vadas Public Facility Corporation to approve Resolution 25 LVPFC-03-01, authorizing its participation in the Summit at Crown Ridge transaction.
I'm trying to do 13, 14, and 15 together.
Well,
Yes,
because they're, do you want to take them together or just?
I can. I am going to introduce each of the partners, though.
Please.
But I want to say real high level, these are all 392 deals, which means they're PFC deals. They're going under the Housing Authority statute, and there's a lot of legislation that's being filed right now. We don't know how it's going to impact us, some of which is unusual legislation. Hopefully they're not passed. So we're bringing 3 deals to you that are all PFC deals today. And so we'll go through them, each one of them.
I was going to say, then let's go ahead and we'll take resolutions 13, 14, and 15, or rather items 13, 14, 15, resolutions 6729, 6730, and 6731.
Sure.
As one motion later.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so this one is.
Tim, just a clarification, you said 392, you meant 303 PFC deals?
Yeah, so they are the 392s, but they do use the 303 statute. Yeah, so these are always weird hybrids. But anyway, so the first one was Journeyman Group. And you want to come up, Sam Kumar, and tell you a little bit about Journeyman Group?
Thank you.
Yeah. Either one. Yeah.
Hi. Respected Board Chair, Commissioners, and Chairperson here. Thank you all. This is the first time I've been here for this, partnering with OSA, with Tim, Opportunity Homes. So thank you all for the opportunity. We are based out of Austin. Our company has been in existence for 25 years. We've worked on a lot of Bexar County projects with our construction arm and also with some of the local school districts here. About 15 years ago, 2012, 13 years ago, we decided that we'll go into the apartments development. Even in my past life with another company, we did the Lackland Air Force Base, public-private partnership with the Air Force, and we did 420 units there. So we decided to go ahead and capitalize on that and start the multifamily division. We've been very fortunate. We worked with the Housing Authority of City of Austin. In Austin, we've done 2 LIHTC projects with them, and we have 9 workforce housing projects with Travis County Housing Finance Corporation and with Housing Authority of City of Austin. Well, they're great partners. We've had really good luck with them. We have a portfolio. We've built about 9,000 units so far, and we currently have a portfolio of about 4,000 units under development, operations, management, or in construction. So we've been very, very, very fortunate with the times that have been. Of course, we decided to go ahead and start moving out of Austin, be in Austin, but also go ahead and start workforce housing and affordable homes in other areas. And San Antonio, being our neighboring city, was our first choice. So we are very excited to be partnering with you and doing this project with y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so what's really neat about these 3 sites, we have very few workforce housing developments on the north side of San Antonio. Many years ago, some of us have been here longer, could tell you how hard it was to build affordable housing on the north side of San Antonio. We had everything but pickets, but well, I'll move on. But this one right here is right by Crown Ridge, La Cantera Resort. So we have obviously lots of workforce housing out there, a lot of jobs, and so Here is a schematic they have already done for this apartment complex. 9 units. So about 60% AMI, 40%, 80% AMI. A mix of different unit mixes, and you'll see that they're equally distributed throughout the different size of units. So you'll have some affordables, but from studios all the way to 3 bedrooms, and the equally distributed. The land cost is expensive to live on the north side, so it's a $6 million land cost. Construction costs about $40 million. Sam has his in-house construction company, so you'll see it's $210,000 a unit, and a total development cost of about $63 million. And I'll go on to the next one. We'll hit each one of these. I'll call Jared up here. I'll let you talk first. I had the inability to.
Hi, my name is Jared Thiereth. I work with Lind. Lind has been in business since early 1980s, so coming up on 5 decades now. It was founded, it's mostly third-party management. Around 2000, the company started an acquisition arm. Shortly thereafter, it started a development arm, which I'm on. And then recently, I guess maybe 5 years ago, we broke ground on our first PFC. So wrapped up maybe a year and a half ago, stabilized. It's been a successful partnership. We've got a couple others. Actually, there was a slide earlier in the meeting in the pipeline. It was the pipeline slide. 2 of those deals are ours. One is Petranco Commons, far west San Antonio, a little bit further than Claiborne 1604, approximately 350 units. That one is currently in lease up right now. We should finish that early to midsummer. And then there's another one, the Josephine, not that far from here, maybe a couple blocks northwest of the Pearl, approximately 250 units, and that one's also wrapping up this summer. That's already open. I want to say open right around the holidays, the new year. So we're phasing that one in as well, but that one should wrap up kind of mid to late summer. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, they've been a very successful partner, and actually our first PFC deals were with the Lind Company. And it's family operated, so I'll move on because you already hit all this. But Fulcrum is actually a partner in this as well. It's Lind and Fulcrum Developments, which is Steve Braha, if that rings a bell. But if you at El Mirasol on Northwest Military, he built that building. So this is Overlook Apartments, 281 North, a little bit north of the TPC Marriott Parkway up there. So these are areas of town we normally we're not able to get into. And so it's nice to actually, the first one in this area. We have actually had almost none in the Stone Oak North area, both between I-10 and 281 and 1604, that whole quadrant. It's been very hard for us to get into, so it's exciting to be able to get some up there. It's high opportunity areas, schools, and again, this is more of a workforce housing development. And pursuant to the development policy y'all approved last board meeting, you know where the funds go. So what we do is we build these developments and we use the funds because this is where we generate funds to build our public housing developments to lower 30% AMI units. Here's a schematic, initial schematic development. Again, it's 360 units. 10% of the units at 60% AMI, and we have 1 and 2 bedrooms, and it's Lind and Fulcrum Development. The per unit cost is about $219,000. You'll see the land again is $4 million, 4.1, and it's about almost close to $80 million. So it's an expensive development, $79 million to be exact. So it'd be a very good development, and we're looking forward to having another successful venture with Lind Company. Can I go on to the next one? Well, unless you have questions, we can always hit the questions.
I was going to say, if there's any questions on them, feel free to interrupt, but otherwise, we can continue.
Okay. And Jeremy? And so Fulcrum is actually on both of these deals. The last one and this one. Jeremy, you introduce yourself and a little bit about this development.
Hi, Jeremy Williams. Got about 20 years of experience in the development industry, partnering with Fulcrum on this project. They've got over 30 years experience in and around San Antonio, who we just spoke about. And so I've recently spent the last 6 years working with Embry, developed over 6 projects with them in the last few years, and excited to bring affordable housing to this part in the city.
perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair.
And this one actually is the heart of Stone Oak. So you see Stone Oak Parkway and Evans Road. Some people live real close to there. I won't mention their names, but it's right in the middle of Stone Oak. And again, these are high opportunity high schools. I think it's Johnson High School. And here's a schematic of the development. But in the City Council District 9, 10% of the units at 6%, and 50% of market rate, 1 and 2 and 3 bedrooms. The 392 deal, land cost is $5.5 million, as so it's a little bit more expensive right in the middle of Stone Oak. Construction cost is $43 million. The number of units, 64 units. So it's a little bit smaller than the other two. The land cost is a little bit higher. And so that's why the per unit cost you'll see at $244,000 a unit. And it's because it's just less units, it's a little smaller site. It'd be the first really PFC development in that area. And for that, if you don't have questions, or you're welcome to questions, ask for approval after all the questions.
I was going to say, any questions?
I do have.
I do too. I have a question.
Sure.
So for the development at Summit at Crown Ridge, is there a reason why we only have 3 units of 3 bedrooms? Like some type of like.
Summit at Crown Ridge, let me flip back to that. You can do it faster than me. Yeah, so this is with Journeyman Group. Is it a market study or?
Yeah. It was actually both. We are very.
Sorry.
Commissioner, we're very tight on the site area, and we were trying to make the numbers work and maximize the unit count. Because we're building on a hill, the areas that we could build on is very limited. And so we tried to say, can we accommodate some 3-bedroom units? So we tried to do that in one building, 3-bedroom. It is a very, very financial performer also. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's the biggest gap using rents. Yeah.
Rents.
You know, that's what a lot of
changes to.
That are entered into after that one to with all the tax savings is affordability and also the sharing with us. And so, but we use it because the reason I like these deals is it gets some affordability on the north side of San Antonio, but number 2 is we do make good revenues on these. The one that we did with the Lynn Company, you know, it was, I don't know if I should say the number or not. I'm looking at my boss here. No, I don't say the numbers. So, but it was, but it was very lucrative. And so with that money, we were able to put it back to 0 to 30% AMI units. And so hopefully these are as lucrative as that one.
So one more quick question about that, about the need for affordable units in this part of town. I've seen a lot of Facebook commentary, and we're monitoring a lot of traffic that's just very negative, very NIMBY-oriented.
Definitely.
About, can you talk a little bit about, first of all, just making sure that the folks who move into these units are going to be supported in some way so that we're not throwing them to the wolves?
Yes, yeah. So I will say this, that the AMI here is 60 to 80% AMI. Whenever we tore down Wheatley, which became East Meadows, you know, we had a study with Trinity University. And when we did that study with Trinity, people got vouchers and they could move wherever they wanted. And what was really interesting on that study is that folks that were the 0 to 15% AMI, some of them moved up to the Stone Oak area, and on their second move, they moved out. Because if you're very low income, there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of bus routes, there's not a lot of supportive services, and And so it's great to have folks everywhere, there's no doubt. But we found through the Trinity University study that sometimes the social services are also very important. And so whenever the folks that live at these folks, they're at the income where they will have a car, they will be able to go to the grocery store, they will be able to, just like any other family, they are. But what's important is that they'll have less commute costs, because right now, because there's very few, and I'm not going to say zero because I'm not sure if there's zero up there, but it's very close to zero before these, that are PFC deals in this area of town. I don't know if the reason I don't know is I don't know if the San Antonio Housing Trust has done one up there, or if anyone knows, but I will say there's very few. And so you get folks that are working, there's a hospital or orderly up there, you have some of those lower paying wage jobs to live in the area is a big benefit, and their kids can partake in the higher income schools, or the higher performing schools, excuse me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead, call for, we're moving this one, right?
All three of them, I believe. Yeah. Well, no other questions. I'll call.
And we're to ask for approval today of these deals.
Call for a motion. Oh, we already did.
No.
No.
Okay, we'll call for a motion on items number 13, 14, and 15.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, all three are approved.
Approved.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, nice to meet
Thank you.
Gosh, on to a discussion item. Update and discussion regarding strategy for current and future properties. Anna Lagoria, Chief Strategy, Data, and Innovation Officer. Didn't know her.
Lorraine.
And Lorraine Robles, Chief Real Estate Development Officer. Jose Moscoto, our Chief Operating Officer.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just start off saying, I know we talked about this the last few meetings in terms of what is the future of the organization, where's the organization going in terms of modernizing its existing stock. And so we had told the board in the last meeting that this organization was going to start the conversation to move the needle, move us forward. And so Jose, Ayana, and Lorraine are going to go into specifics, but I just wanted to provide context that this is a continuation of previous meetings, that we're going to now talk a little bit more substance in terms of where we're headed.
Great.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As with most housing authorities dealing with their public housing portfolios and the age of those portfolios, we wanted to, and you may know this information already, but we want to give you a bit of set the stage, paint the picture of what we're currently dealing with in terms of our public housing portfolio. So going to our first slide, the main highlights for this, while we have 6,000 public housing units, within 59 properties, they are 100% public housing. And within that portfolio, which is what we're mostly interested in, there's a combined average age of 51 years. Now, that's an average age, but if you look at the oldest property in the portfolio, you've got a property that's 105 years old. So that is our oldest, built in 1920, which is San Pedro Arms. All the way to a property that's only 23 years old, but that's just one. That was built in 2002, being our Springview. Now, this next bullet, we say 6 communities are under 30 years old. What that really means is out of those 59 properties, you have 53 that are over 30 years old, very old. And then some of the biggest properties in the portfolio that are the oldest, you look at Alazan, which was built in 1939, that's 86 years old. We've got Casiano, which is 72 years old, and Lincoln, which is 85 years old. So just want to paint the picture of, what we're looking at and setting the stage for the discussion of repositioning. Some added thoughts and comments about the current conditions of the public housing portfolio, a lot of deferred maintenance, and it will continue to grow under the public housing model. if you look at the deferred maintenance and the need for upgrades and continuing to maintain those units, if you factor in inflation, it would take 154 years to handle and financially manage with our capital fund program. That is incorporating inflation, just to get and handle all of our deferred maintenance. Third note, on a monthly basis, under the public housing program, we're losing $700,000 a month just to operate. Annually, and you'll be seeing budgets coming up. There's always a projected annual deficit that has to be supported and financed with our MTW activities. Last note, which is one of the biggest notes, which is really has been emphasized to us by HUD, is that we are one of the last remaining large housing authorities in the United States that has not repositioned our public housing portfolio. Okay. This slide is simply an illustration over 50 years, the amount of deferred needs that, and the cost, which is, does not take into account inflation. This would be just straight dollars of CFP money. So 3 notes before I leave the mic, talking about our current environment. The current public housing model, as I mentioned earlier, if we continue down this road, our funding shortfalls because of deferred maintenance and physical plant needs as our properties age, that shortfall will continue to grow. It just becomes that much more difficult in its current financing and operations. Second piece to that, same thing, in the public housing operations model, the preservation of these units is not sustainable. You simply will not be able to generate enough revenue in these current programs to sustain the units as they currently stand. But the last piece, which is very important, and talking about Opportunity Home, anything we do in terms of repositioning and redeveloping any of our public housing units, the focus is always going to be resident-centered. And what we mean by that, when we say protect the residents, it's really about engaging the residents and educating them on what's happening and what we can do so that they fully understand, one, their rights, but an impact. But bottom line, we'll talk some more in future slides about protecting the residents as we move forward as an agency.
Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about is this transformation pathway, which leads into our strategic planning. And what we're doing here is looking down the road for the next 12 years as we approach this plan. And one of the things that we gave consideration to and we recognize is that we are very action-oriented and we are quick to jump into a solution, but sometimes without fully understanding the problem. So right now, what we are committed to doing as part of this, and this would be through our strategic planning process, and I appreciate earlier the comment that was made about bringing focus groups, about ensuring that we are looking specifically at our residents' needs. It's that this pathway for us is going to seek to understand what is happening at each community and build a stronger solution to address that community's specific needs. This is not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. We're not going to look at every property as being the same. Each one is going to have its own approach. And Lorraine will talk a little bit more about that as we get through the presentation. So this led us to have to host a staff workshop. And we held that on Friday, March 7th. And one of the great things about this workshop was that we invited 41 staff. So this was more than just our senior leadership team. We invited assistant directors, we invited frontline staff, people that would be involved with the process of our repositioning, so that all the staff could understand and could be part of the conversation. Again, just as much as the conversation is important for our residents to be part of, we also want staff to understand and be part of the conversation as well. So we had 2 presentations that were provided to us by experts in the field, and then we had 3 engaging sessions with our staff to just discuss the repositioning considerations. What do we need to look at? What our challenges are? And what our next steps should be. And so our outcomes for the workshop were understand why repositioning is necessary and what preservation means for us. We also wanted to come out of this with understanding and discussing those potential funding streams that could include rental assistance demonstration, also known as RAD, Section 18, our 4% and 9% tax credit options, choice, and other funding options that are available. We also wanted to identify and define our criteria, very important for prioritizing communities that would be selected for repositioning. We have to understand, again, as I mentioned, each community's needs, and how we look and approach each one independently. And then engage in a candid discussion as a group to articulate any known or anticipated challenges or potential issues. Again, if there's anything that we can know about and plan for upfront, the better off our approaches are going to be. So as part of our expert presentation highlights, we did get an overview of RAD, mixed financing, and all of those other choices. That did include choice and bonds. RAD does include tenant protections, and it's identical to the housing where the tenant portion is 30% if they lose their income. So there's tenant protection built in. Due to the complexity of the development, in which we understand very well, that they did recommend negotiating terms to regain control from the development partner within 3 to 5 years. Acquisition can still take place at the end of the compliance period, so that would remain the same, but it's being more involved in the development and the upfront negotiations. PHAs now have the option of a blended approach where some units in a development can convert to RAD in Section 18. And then we also need to consider the small area fair market rents of the area and the market rents for financial feasibility. So these were the things that were kind of given to us as guiding points to make sure as we look at our communities that we're looking at the right options. And so for that, I'll turn it over to Lorraine.
So as we went through the day and we received new tools for our toolbox, and we discussed and we researched and brainstormed about what the possibilities were, we also discussed what criteria do we use to prioritize this large portfolio. So first we talked about the financial considerations. And first was the current cost to operate. Are our developments operating at their full capacity? And if not, why? Why aren't they? What can be done in order to get them there? We also talked about interest rates. With every different financing structure, there are different interest rates associated with that. So as Ayanna mentioned, there's not a one-size-fits-all. We have to look at each individual development and determine what's the best financing structure for that particular development. Construction costs. As we look at not just the financial but physical needs of each development, what would it cost to either make minor repairs or do comprehensive rehabilitation or a complete do-over, right? So taking construction costs into consideration. And again, looking at our different financing options, cost of physical needs for each particular property, and most important is market study, looking at the area in which the development sits and obtaining a market study to let us know what are the rents in that particular area and what can that property support. Next is physical conditions, so not only looking at the exterior and infrastructure of the property, but also looking at the interior of the units. Taking into consideration, are the units antiquated? You know, do they meet current modernized units and size and condition and amenities? The site plan, is it antiquated? Does it lend itself to negative activity? Next was available land, not only where the property sits, but any available land that might be surrounding that property. With every consideration, we also have to note that we will have to go through environmental review, and some of the environmental review will require remediation if any contamination or environmental issue is addressed. Then there's historic designation. You saw Jose explained the age of our properties. So many of them just by informally are considered historic, but some do have a historic designation, which can help and sometimes can make it a challenge. So how does it help? We can apply for historic tax credits, both at the state and federal level, that can help fund the improvements for that property. The other thing that we have to take into consideration is if it has a formal designation, we are now subject to OHP, the Office of Historic Preservation, and the Texas Historical Commission. So we would have to get guidance from them as to what we can and cannot do. And then we also want to look at current and future density. Is there an opportunity to take a property that may be small in size but sits on a large piece of land and increase that density in order to maximize the amount of affordable units? And then we talked about community. Do we have resident and community support for these repositioning ideas? Do we have political support? That's also extremely important. We needed to look also at the property and on-site resources. Many of our public housing properties and other properties have on-site services that help our families. We also want to look at the neighborhoods and take into consideration what services and resources are available to our residents. We know that they heavily rely on those services. And then looking at the density within the neighborhood. Are there a large number of rental units available within that community? Is there still potential for more affordable units, or has that market been saturated? Again, as we worked through the day, we had a lot of enthusiasm and excitement around this topic, and we started to think about what's going to help guide us, what's going to help move us through this process, and what are the important things we need to be mindful of. And so we developed a credo, and they fell into these three categories. And Jose mentioned this, which was protect residents. All of our residents deserve to live in dignified, safe, and modern housing. We truly believe that. Protect tenant rights, knowing that they have a lot of rights under public housing, knowing that we need to reposition our assets. We want to make sure that they retain those same rights. Maintain deep affordability. We know that probably not every unit or every building can be saved or preserved, but in making that adjustment or creating new ones, we need to retain that affordability and that subsidy in order to protect our residents and better serve them. Preservation. We know that we need to preserve our existing housing stock. With the high demand for affordable housing, it's not enough to just create new housing. We have beautiful assets that are already on the ground and in service that we need to protect and preserve. Approach all repositioning with feasibility in mind. Not only can we make the changes that are necessary in order for that development or that property to be successful, but can it sustain itself financially? Can it maintain the property? And then protect the financial viability of the organization to continue to serve. And this is extremely important. We know that there are dollars available through the Housing Authority to invest in our different properties, but it's important that we leverage each and every one of those dollars and look for every funding possibility available to us in order to maximize those dollars and make sure that we continue to exist and to serve our residents. And then the third was to be innovative. National and Texas public housing authorities have laid a path for repositioning, as Jose mentioned. Many of the major cities in Texas reposition all of their public housing. And so there are experts that can help us with this and can provide us with guidance and lessons learned. And then the next is to lean into our MTW designation to be innovative and provide choice to residents. This is so important, and the beauty of MTW is that we're able to create new housing programs that will provide even more housing choices for our residents. So we need to do more of that. And then keep residents at the center of the transformation. They are helping to make the plans for future development or improvement. It's not us leading that effort or trying to impose our ideas or decisions upon them. So what are next steps? Next is to prioritize. We'll be part of the strategic planning process. So we'll be collecting and analyzing data. And as we mentioned previously, you know, the cost to operate, what are the financial structures or tools that we can use from RAD, and look at the small area fair market rents as well as market rents in these different communities. Physical needs of the property, and then again, resident, community, and political support for these repositioning projects. As we went through the day and we were talking about it, we realized that there may be some we call quick conversions or low-hanging fruit, where we might have newer constructed properties that require rehabilitation and have a small number of public housing units that we could convert. Still keep in mind that every project will have to go through environmental review, but these would allow us to move faster and would have a shorter timeline than some of our larger projects that would have to go through a full-blown environmental review that involved floodplain 8-step process, historic review. So I know that that's been a lot of information that we've presented today, but we'd like to take some time to open it up for questions.
Now, if we change our designation, we no longer have nation?
No, we do not.
Okay.
It still applies through housing.
So then that means that are the oldest had essentially will no longer become. Is that what you guys are saying? If the money's allowed and if.
Correct. They would fall under the Section 8 and RAD PBV.
For the research I've done, oh, sorry, did you have?
Keep in mind, on how we redevelop and how we, there's always policies that public housing lead, a lot of those and ACOP requirements for various operating procedures when they convert over. It's just all in the planning piece together.
The learning from the cities who have gone before started to do some of this, how much impact into folks in their portfolio, and what have we learned in terms of like people thought or that was not actually justified in, because I think a shift like this, a lot of fears and may not be real, that might work like this from happening. So I just wonder if you could share what you learned from or profound in terms of caution or a motivation to go in that direction.
Okay.
Question?
Agencies. I'm going to speak from work experience, authority, and where we did. But one of the biggest that I mentioned it is engagement and education, and keep as you go through the process. Most what they, and so if we continuously reassure them that it is a one-for-one replacement, you're not going to be displaced. That's always seems to be the big stay in the area we redevelop. Back engaged, and depending on how you
be really helpful for us tying in this